Let me tell you why. There is no setup as mine, Atsushi Hrog, Danis, virtual race experience or wheels from Boosted Media, which can give you more immersive experience than VR. But also why VR maybe is not for you. I will try to compress the most important information you will need to have to be able at the end to make your choice. And of course I will start with 2-minute science, so please give attention to this if you want to understand how the virtual world works and how we perceive the VR reality. Let's see how the nervous system works. The nervous system is divided into two main divisions: the central nervous system, which consists of the brain and the spinal cord, and the peripheral nervous system, which receives information from the surrounding world outside of our body. Basically, we have sensors or receptors all over the body which make some processing and send electrical signal to the brain, which interprets that signal into feeling or picture. It is important to remember there is a wide variety of sensors which are divided by the type of stimulus they detect. Mechanoreceptors, which respond to touch and pressure, thermoreceptors, which respond to temperature changes, chemoreceptors, which respond to specific chemicals, and photoreceptors, which respond to photons, the light particles. The pressure and thermoreceptors are spread over the body, but for other receptors we have very complex organs, like nose for smelling, tongue for tasting, and eyes for seeing. It's very important to understand our brain doesn't feel, smell, taste, hear, or see, but only receive electric impulses through those receptors and interpret that information. And that being said, let's see why the VR experience is so immersive. Our eyes are an insanely complex organ, but let's see how the 3D image is created in the brain. Light passes through the pupil to enter the eye, and the iris, the colored part of the eye, controls the size of the pupil and regulates the amount of light passing through. Behind the pupil sits the lens, which focuses the light onto the retina. When we do this with two eyes at once, the brain is able to interpret the binocular disparity, which is the different position of the image into the two retinas. The greater the disparity of those two images is, the closest the object is. Actually, those two images give us the depth of perception, and that exactly is what the VR headset is designed to do. It gives us two different images through each lens and create that precise disparity and give us that depth of perception. I have said this million times, but I will repeat that again. With the VR, we are actually sitting in the car on the track. And what basically happens is our eyes perceive photons from a specific angle with precise disparity from the two images and send specific electro signal to our brain, which interprets that signal to 3D image. We basically cheat part of our peripheral system, in that case our eyes, and our brain just read the data and give us that experience, so we have no choice but believe we are into that environment. But as everything in life, if we cheat on something, there is always side effect. The peripheral system is not just what we see. I've talked in the beginning about all the different receptors we have to be able to interact with the world appropriately, and they all work together. We cheat our photoreceptors and now our brain believes we are into that environment, but our pressure detectors receive nothing. The reason untrained brain create that unpleasant experience called motion sickness is because visually prepare our body and our muscle to interact with the environment, but the environment is fake. There is no pressure signal to our mechanoreceptors, and that is very confusing for the brain. Because one of the main jobs of the peripheral nervous system is to keep us safe, and because in this specific moment there is great disparity through the different senses, our brain will try to create unpleasant sense feeling and pull us out from this environment to keep us safe. We can feel sick, the body may secrete sweat to cool down the peripheral nervous system, and we can have headache for days. Now, those are extreme side effects and very rare in my experience, but if you are about to take your first headset, Here I have few suggestions how you can deal with it. When you first time sit in the VR world and start your first ever lap, you may feel your body and your organs all over the place. Your body will release some adrenaline and you may feel that warm feeling in your stomach. In the first few corners will be even pleasant feeling, but after a few minutes you may start feeling sick. It is very important to take off the headset from the first sign of that sickness feeling. Go on your window or terrace or even go for a walk if possible and try to look far in the distance, which will calm down particular brain area and make you instantly feel back to normal. Don't you never ever push yourself to the point where you're gonna feel really sick, because that may hardwire response into your nervous system and will make the process even harder. You may put yourself in condition where you will get sick just thinking about it. I have headset for more than 4 years and from my experience tested many people. I have to say most of them felt comfortable in 2-3 sessions, but I had a friend who had to deal with that process for a few weeks, but now he's driving for 5 hours daily. I believe most of the experienced gamers adapt very quickly to this new world. Now let's talk about the real advantages and cons between the triple screen and the headset for actual driving and racing. Those of course will be through my very personal experience, and there is a big chance will be different for you. I'm sure some experienced drivers who tested both worlds will leave a comment, and some of those comments will be totally different from mine, and I strongly suggest go and read those and not just form opinion based from me and my experience. We are all different and you don't know yet in which group you belong. The first and the most important positive is the binocular vision, which gives depth perception. Besides of the insane immersion, gives to the brain very rich information and makes the brain job much more easy to execute the appropriate movements and position the car into space. That three-dimensional space will give you better sense of speed, more comfort in close fight, and in general better and more natural interaction with the environment. And as I've said before, the reason for that is just the way our brain and peripheral nervous system interact, calculate and execute. The second and probably the last a little bit controversial positive is the freedom of view. I say controversial because on triples we have constant 140 to 170 degrees field of view, and in VR is between 110 and 120. There are some headsets which make exception with wider field of view, but the main point is in VR we have total freedom of view. We just naturally turn our heads into the different driving points like apexes, turning or braking points. And that's pretty much all the positive we get from VR, and everything else is big trade-off in comparison to the triples. The first big problem is the picture response. The VR technology requires syncing in the picture to give us the smoothest experience possible. This process requires some time and creates some latency in the picture. We talk about few milliseconds differences, but in driving makes huge difference. With most of the gaming monitors those days, which have 1 millisecond response time, I personally feel the car much more alive and more responsive to my inputs in comparison to my Valve Index headset. When I go back and forth through those devices, I really have to noticeably shift my driving points. I guess part of this is the different perspective, and part of this because of the latency in the picture my eyes are receiving. Luckily, our brain is very flexible and with long enough experience is able to adapt and shift easy to the new circumstances. I have 9 different titles on iRacing and 4.5 on triples and 4.5 on VR. That mid-title I switched from triples to VR in the middle of the season, and I was capable to adapt and even set some world records in that period. But again, I feel the car much more responsive in triples, which I definitely prefer for my driving inputs. The rest of the cons are cosmetic, but they can have huge impact into your driving performance. I was very happy to use VR only for over 3 years, but keep in mind I race championships with races no longer than 45 minutes. And after each season I had to change the mask of the headset, my clothes and even my socks because of the sweat. Even if two fans blow my way strong stream of air, that was not enough to keep me cool, and that is really uncomfortable feeling. And the last Nürburgring Endurance Championship with stints around 1.5 hours was absolute torture. The other big con is the isolation from the real world, and sim racing can be many things, at least is many things for me. I love driving competitively, it's one experience. I love the experience of driving, it's completely different experience. And I love creating sim racing environment, it's completely different hobby. What's the point of creating this beautiful environment if I put the headset and can't interact with it? Sure, you can still create some basic muscle memories and reach few buttons while driving, but you can't enjoy them in their full potential. So, I can't tell you which is the best gear for you because I don't know anything about you. But based on that knowledge you receive through all the information you collect from community, from friends, from this video, the comments you read, I have for you 3 questions, and if you can answer to those, the choice will be obvious. First, you race competitively, sometimes long races, and all you care is the raw results? If that's the case, triples will fit much better. Second, you enjoy creating beautiful environment with beautiful sim gear like button boxes, displays and different gadgets, and you enjoy interacting with your environment, triples is definitely for you. Third, do you care about the most immersive experience and you really want to feel you are in the actual car? You want to get lost in that experience and totally forget about the real world? If you are ready to deal with the sweat and sacrifice some comfort, then VR is unbeatable, and as I've said before, no matter how crazy the setup is, if you perceive that flat picture from the monitor, you can't compare it to the 3-dimensional VR world. See you in the next one.